Hi, welcome to Get Lit, Blue Star Deer Woman, flying solo for the summer. I wanted to share some ideas that I'm having about asserting our will. Now, of late, and for years, most of my life, I had no interest in politics. And so I didn't learn a lot about, Constitution or how our government was organized or run. But because of the significant impression of politics in the world right now, I've gotten a passion for understanding how did we get to the place that we're at. And simultaneously, I've been examining, what is our, what we call free will, and versus assertion of our will. And so I kind of want to, I'm talking out loud with you. I work things out in the moment. This is all improv, the art of being in the moment. But I share these insights to maybe wake up a curiosity in you, to think about these kinds of ideas in different ways, or to examine and self-reflect on what do you feel when I bring up these kinds of ideas. So what I had been examining all along was, when I think about free will, I have to examine, is free will, an assertion of the dynamics of our personality? It's like you see something, you want something, and so you assert your will to acquire it. And or, when we hear, the expression, thy will be done, all right? For those of us who allow there are kernels of truth in the scriptures, and we know that they've been misconstrued a bit and translated in a multitude of ways. But if we go back to thy will be done, there seems to be a cross-cultural understanding that there is a source creation that flows through all things. And we understand now, through science and mathematics, that there is a dynamic surf. And this energetic is continually flowing through all life. And we have identified that when we flow with this energetic creation, that we experience a certain centeredness, and the expression of we're surfing on the crest of the wave. And there seems to be some truth that when we allow ourselves to go with the flow, there may be a lessening, if no experience at all, of resistance. And then there's that understanding that when we resist the flow is when we experience pain and suffering. So I started to examine when I have had a vision or a dream, or even just simply I want something in life, or I want a specific experience, that, with my own chutzpah, my own knowledge and intelligence, I would go down a path and I'd assert, and assert has a quality of force and I would go after what I want. And if an obstacle appeared, I would, with stamina and endurance, I would chisel away at that obstacle or find another way. And all the time, there's a certain stress element because I see something over there that I want, and I'm hitting these resistances. And after watching that for so long, I started to think, okay, what happens if I stop asserting my will, but I just come back here and I hold this intention, which is energy, right? So here we are again. It's an energetic field. Source Creator is an ongoing, vibrant force of life. And what if I didn't assert, but I energetically held the intention, the thought, which is energy? And and we've heard this concept before, I just put out to the universe, I would like to have this experience. And so that led me to examining how do you put out into the universe and also continue moving towards what you want. But recognize when there's a moment of resistance that it doesn't mean things have gone bad or the universe is punishing us or that we aren't supposed to have it. But what I've learned, the practice I'm in now, is when that resistance occurs, it's a reminder to me to breathe and cultivate patience and remind myself, affirm that the universe knows that's where I really want to get to. Okay? Now, I may want to get there with a concept of what it's going to create or how it's going to unfold or how it's going to serve me or the planet. But in essence, I think we learn this a lot when we're in our self-reflective studies, that the actual pursuit is going to provide certain experiences for me to deepen who I am, deepen my self-awareness. And that in the end, it's not ultimately, let's say I want a house or a home. It's not that particular attainment. It's going to be how I experience life after having set that intention in the universe, and how it's going to unfold, and what are those things that I need to become aware of to increase my awareness and consciousness, and trust and faith that I am energy, the universe is energy, and just the simple law of physics. What I put out into the world, into the universe, comes back to me. So if I am on a path of, say, wanting a home, and there's some obstruction, so human would perceive, I don't readily go to the place, yeah, there it is again, I'm not going to get what I want. And it's like, no. You go, okay, well, the universe knows what I want, and I'll continue to do what I can. But I try to follow that path of least resistance. I begin to recognize there's no pain and suffering unless I'm thinking something is denied or taken away from me, even if I become ill. The illness then becomes, all right, there's something here for me to become more conscious of that will then bring me to the next place. All right, so this is the understanding of asserting will and thy will be done. Now, let's go back to politics for a moment. Recently, I have been, I've read a lot about propaganda and influence, and even as recent as last night, I thought, I'm going to watch this video. It's called Jesus Camp. And it was another opportunity to examine the groups of people on our planet who feel things should be a certain way, and all the dynamics that they have implemented to get that way, to either sway the people, influence the people, maybe even command the people. And Aldous Huxley, from the past, spoke a lot about propaganda and used examples, during the Nazi era, which we're not so sure that's over, but how Hitler used persuasive thought and began to eliminate anything that was in culture that was influencing a way of thought, especially a collective thought, that was not in alignment with what he wanted the direction to go. And so we still see much of this in the world. Now, as I was studying our government, I was really trying to understand how did we get the representation that we do of this far left and far right thinking. And I started to become knowledgeable about what we call the conservative movement, and the very rich, right now the multi-billionaires, and this conservative thinking. And there seems to be a stream of, they want to protect their wealth. They want to protect what they call the free market. They don't necessarily agree that the government should be taking care of the people. Thus, the controversy right now about the Affordable Care Act. Okay, I feel like people have the freedom and should exert the freedom of creating employment for themselves and being able to self-serve. Well, of course, this brings up lots of issues. But in my study, what I started to uncover was that the conservative movement started decades ago, and how all the different aspects of influence. And so what their wealth began to buy was they started to enter the academic institutions and decided, well, we need to get some conservative curriculum and conservative professors, and we'll give this university a lot of money that they just can't refuse, and we'll start getting into the educational system, which is exactly what they did. Okay. Then we had the approach of, and that's going on today, both left and right, how can we use the media? How can we use the media, whether we are offering a truth or a falsity, true news or fake news? How can we get into the media and begin to influence the thinking of people? How can we begin to really use it as a psychological tool? How do we embed a continual message so that people start to wake up the next day and go, oh yeah, free market. So we have been bombarded with a huge amount of propaganda, but more importantly, groups who have decided their way is the way, and have used all these kinds of tools that I would call asserting one's will. Okay? So I feel like we have a lot of assertion of will, as opposed to if we were to allow, I think, in our core, And of course, this is in my humble opinion, but I feel there are many people I know that share this. There's a certain quality of life that we feel live and let live. I think we have agreement to not do harm to one another, to enhance diversity, non-judgmental ability to listen and experience other humans, and that there perhaps is an organic evolution of harmony. And now we go back to, well, thy will be done. If people were not being asserted upon, impressed upon, that in our very beautiful and lovely human nature, there is an organic allowance, there is a collective ability to surf the crest of the wave. And so I think I bring this forward because I think these are good things to be aware of. We're starting to raise our consciousness more and more, but we're also have this opposition, this assertion of will all around us, and a certain amount of brainwashing, of course, where when we sit back and we look at, oh my gosh, what do I believe in? Well, the important question is, why do you hold that belief? And is that belief all-embracing? Is that belief, does it eliminate a certain population? And that's what we're witnessing today. And so I think looking at the assertion of will versus the allowance of the collective will, the universal will. Now, I have a theory, and I think we're witnessing it now. I think that some of the assertion of will, just by the mere fact that it does not represent a tone of equality, is nearing its own suicide, nearing its own self-sabotage. That because evolution continues and the greatness of creation is an ongoing flow, and it also demonstrates a harmonic, a getting along together, a community. It's an infinite community of a vast number of organisms that have learned that just do. They interact with each other, and then sometimes there's an elimination, and then there's a new growth, and it's just like our cycles. We come, we go. So if we use the theory of the micro is the macro and the macro is the micro, then I think what we're witnessing on the planet right now is that there has been such a resistance to that universal flow, to that collective harmony, that there is that self-sabotage. We're watching things dissolve left and right. We're watching those asserted wills, that propaganda that hasn't included the entire community, is now no longer being sustained. And that's why I think we're starting to see our community of humans, we're rising up, we're starting to go, wait a second, and because there's a genuine field of nonviolence in our community, because there is more of a heartful approach. Now, that doesn't mean we eliminate being angry or being upset when something violates our freedom. No. But it's a clean anger. It's a clean saying, I do not consent. It's a knowing that something greater allows us to be free. And something greater, we know, it's our birthright to live upon this planet. And the earth is not for sale. And so I think where we're coming to, and I think it I think evolutionary consciousness, evolutionary movement, thank goodness we continue, is revealing that what's no longer needed is being released. But we also have another theory of that critical point, that critical moment when quantum leap, boom, what had been chipping away as no longer serving, just whoosh, there's that moment and it's over. And so I think there is a collective understanding that we're recognizing this dissolve, this dissolution is approaching more and more in every moment, and our heartful selves of integrity and honesty and transparency and freedom for all, a tone of equality, justice is growing. And thank goodness for the family of love. And so those are my thoughts today. And like I said, I'm not here to argue on them. I'm just, my whole focus is self-consciousness and self-reflection, and how do we come to more and more grace and peace with being the beings that we are. And I'm not here to influence or propagandize, although it's very tempting, right? Because you see this dynamic in the world. No, I think we have something much more powerful happening, that as we strengthen in the virtues of the heart, it's a given. It's an absolute given that we're all going to surf this wave together. So thanks for listening. And I always welcome your thoughts. Get Lit has a Facebook page, and I'll put that in the YouTube channel as well. And wishing all of us a very beautiful, ongoing moments of self-reflection. Thanks.